All right. Well, welcome Ziehmer family again. I am so excited. How many years have you been gathering here now for the reunion? Oh, I threw you on that one.
Yeah, how many years have you been coming to the church?
Forced.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think 2018 was the first year
Okay.
the pavilion was built.
Oh my gracious, so 8 years? That's so exciting. Well, I welcome you. For those of you who I have not met, and I think I've met most of you, I'm Pastor Sue. I've been the pastor here for, it will be 17 years in October. Time just flies. But I do want to welcome you, and on behalf of the entire congregation that knows that you're here, and Dave and I just warmly welcome you. Please make yourselves at home while you're here. I wanted to just fill you in as I do during this time. I will only take a few minutes, I promise you. But I just wanted to share what is going on with this church that your ancestors, that your family members started, and it's still going strong. So there's a lot of things that we continue every year that I'm not going to bore you with, but I do want to say first, does everybody get our Christmas newsletter? If you don't and you would like to, there are index cards on that back table. Put your name and address and stick it in the donation box in the back room, and we look at that every week, and we will add you to the mailing list. But every time we send out a Christmas newsletter, we have the year in review on the back. So if you'd like to follow along and you're not on Facebook or YouTube, that's the perfect way to see the highlights of the year. So we have another baptism coming up. I have baptized over 120 people in the river since I've been here. We're changing it up this year and having a baptism at Black Machine State Park during our picnic. So we're usually the people at the boat launch are sitting in kayaks, and they wait to put their kayak in, and they just sit and watch. So we're hoping to get a lot of people interested in what we're doing. So that's coming up. But just quickly, I just wanted to share some missions. I know some of you have supported us. I know you all support us, but for those who support financially, we appreciate you so much. We do so much in the community. Last year we gave over $20,000 to missions, and most of those are local. So helping local families. We also have dug 2 freshwater wells in Uganda, and you may have heard that before. So we really believe in what Jesus said about starting in Jerusalem and being witnesses in Judea, Samaria, and to all the ends of the earth. So we try to do that in our own backyard. So 10% of every offering that we take here on Sunday goes to a benevolent fund, and that's all local. So we just try to help out as many people as we can. Let's see. I wanted to share a couple things that are upcoming. Does anybody follow us on Facebook? Okay. All right. That's great. We appreciate that. All of our sermons are online and have been for, I think, about 7 years, if not longer. So we have a YouTube channel. Check it out if you will. But you're going to see some fun things coming up. Has anybody ever heard of Sam Childers, the machine gun preacher? Sounds funny, doesn't it? So raise your hand if you've ever heard of him. There was a movie, Machine Gun Preacher, with Gerard Butler. Okay, that's a true story about a man who was in a 1%er biker gang, who was a drug addict and a drug dealer, and his wife found Jesus first, and he followed in her footsteps, found Jesus, became saved, went on a mission trip to, I believe it was either the Sudan or Uganda, and realized the genocide that was happening over there. People were abducting children and killing their parents and using them as slaves and soldiers. And he has been battling that ever since. And all the children that he rescued over there call him Machine Gun Preacher, because he does carry he and his men carry automatic weapons. Whether you agree with that or not, it's a neat story. He's built churches and orphanages all over Africa and here. So he is coming here. on August 1st. So I know a lot of you aren't local, but it's just going to be really exciting. A ton of people are coming from the community to see him. So it's going to be really, really neat to hear. And he's just an amazing evangelist. So that's coming up and a bunch of other fun stuff. So I will be here for a little while. I have a youth event today that we're leaving for after this. Couldn't be helped on the same day. I try to get people to not plan anything, but it is what it is. So we have a new youth leader, and we have a really great youth group right now, and they're very active. So we've got to leave here after a bit to go there. So, but I will be around. Does anybody have any questions for me about the church? Okay. Then I would love to offer a prayer for the rest of your day, and then I'm going to turn it over to the family. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, I am so grateful for this day that you have made, and I ask you, Lord, to bless us and bless this family, Lord, as they keep traveling and planning and gathering and fellowshipping and loving you, Lord. So I pray for their day. I pray for joy. I pray for reconnected friendships and relationships, Lord. I pray for safety in travel. And I just pray for a perfect day of family gathering. Lord, we just, again, give you thanks, and we just praise you, Lord, for who you are. We pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Marissa Campbell. I'm Dottie's daughter. Most of you look familiar. I've been coming here most of the 8 years that we've been here. People learned over time that I was one of the loudest in the bunch, hence the reason why I'm your announcer, I guess. So I'm just going to go over with you kind of our schedule for today before we get into our Ziehmer Grandchildren program. But we're going to obviously have the program. After the program is done, well, one of our favorite things to do is to go around the room, share what is going on in people's lives and families. We all like to hear about new grandchildren, where people have moved to, new careers, things like that. So we will take an opportunity to do that. Once that is completed, you are not allowed to leave. We are doing our family group photo. So don't go up to the pavilion yet. Everyone's going to go outside. We're going to get our group photo done. And as soon as the photo's done, then we can head up to the pavilion for lunch. After lunch, anybody who has time, if you could stick around and help with the cleanup, I think that would be greatly appreciated. A couple other announcements. We're always looking for volunteers and planners for next year. I think the specific request has not only been to help plan the event, figure out what would be fun, kind of new for people at the event, but also getting the invite and the RSVPs taken care of. So anybody who's a little social media savvy who would like to be a part of that, see Susan. She's the one to talk to. We would love to have your help. Also at the pavilion, after your lunch or during your lunch, there is an offering box. Any offering that is left not only will go to the assistants here of the church that's always so gracious for allowing us to have this event, but also will help cover any reunion expenses for food. There was some new information regarding Uncle John's experience in the Russian army. So that has been memorialized on some handouts that are available on a table that is here in the fellowship hall. So if you're interested in learning about Uncle John's experience, take a look at the fellowship hall. Also, much of the Ziehmer family history information that's been shared at past reunions has been copied for the Clearfield County Historical Society. So anyone who wants to research that information, the Historical Society is now a good place to look. Lastly, as I indicated, this is a program where we are introducing today the Ziehmer grandchildren. So anybody involved in that part of the program, I invite you up to start that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Skylar Boone. I'm a great-grandson of Mr. Ziehmer. I will be clicking through the slides today and kind of helping to facilitate everything. So, as we mentioned, the focus today is the grandchildren, so 2 generations down from William Ziehmer. We're going to focus on these different branches of the family. The different folks from those branches are going to come up and talk about them. Before we do that, real quick, we have a little just chronology, so you can see where your ancestors fit in with other people's ancestors. Of note, we have 1 Ziehmer grandchild still alive today. It's pretty awesome. So that's how they all fit in history together. And then I think first up we have August.
Okay. Uncle August, the man I didn't know anything about until I came to this reunion. And I have the Ziehmer photo, and on the back of it is written, "Unknown man." Turns out that he is a brother to our grandparents. I had no idea. So he was the son of Amelia. Amelia was married first, and she had 3, maybe 4 children. A little unclear in the text. The other children died. August was the surviving child. When she was widowed, then she married Grandpa Ziehmer, and he adopted him. So he was the elder brother. Don't know much about him, obviously, but I'll tell you what I do know. He grew up here, married Julia Bessler from Phillipsburg in 1904. They lived here for a while. Their first 4 children were born here. They moved to Wisconsin, had another child, Jack. Then they moved to California, Missouri, and that's where they lived. And that's where his descendants still live. He was a farmer, a carpenter, and he worked for the Missouri Pacific Railroad. So the generation we're talking about are his children, 10 of them. Otto, Olga, Sam, Fritz, Jack, Emma, John, Alma, Henry, and Elsie. Do you hear some familiar names in there? It's interesting how the names are in all the families. Okay, last year I heard from 2 of the granddaughters. The first contact we've had forever. I've had forever. So I know a little bit about them. Otto, the firstborn, died at 16. When August died, at age 56, Sam and his wife stayed on the farm with their mother, who never did learn to speak English. John was a machinist at a woolen mill, and he was a World War II vet. Okay, one of the granddaughters who wrote to me said her father was Henry, and he eloped with his wife Ruby on Valentine's Day in 1941. I thought that was sweet. And the other granddaughter, Nancy Hill, whose mother was Elsie, the youngest of the children, her parents had a hardware store. And that's kind of all I know about them. But if any of you are ever in Missouri, California, Missouri, look for the name Ziehmer, and you will find relatives. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that these people are our relatives, our cousins. So that's August.
All set?
All set for August.
Next up are the Litkeys.
Is there someone else to speak besides me?
I think there's several.
I'm not Chris Deck, but Chris talked to him yesterday and got through here a little later, and he asked me to fill in on Bill Litke. Seth is a step-grandson of Bill's. So here's what we know about Bill. He was the oldest grandchild of William and Amelia Ziehmer. Litkeys did have a son that was born before him, John, who died at birth. Bill went to teacher's college, and then he taught high school to pay for his law school classes at Temple University. I don't know when he met Helen, but in 1937, Bill and Helen Kephart Smith were married in New York City. And Helen had a daughter, Marion, by her first husband, and so she came into the family, into the Litkey family. Bill's law practice was in Bellefonte, his office was in Bellefonte, and also Lawrence State College. He ran for district attorney and lost in the 1950s. And then there was a point in the 1950s when the Center County Common Pleas judge, at that time, Center County only had one county judge, and he died in office. And Bill was appointed by Governor Leader to fill in for the 6 months until the newly elected judge took office. So he was the Center County Common Pleas judge. He ran for Congress in 1962 and sent all of his nieces and nephews and relatives photographed him at the White House shaking hands with President Kennedy as a campaign thing. He was very active. He was the president of the State Bar Association for a term. Very active in Democratic state politics. Knew all the governors, and at some point we need to have Larry or Dennis Byrd share his first visit to a Penn State football game, because it involves Uncle Bill and the governor, and well, only Denny can tell it. Bill was a businessman, and in the 1950s he bought up a lot of vacant land in the State College and built one of the first strip malls, small shopping centers of central Pennsylvania. And then he established a family corporation that built a number of shopping centers and other commercial developments in central and western Pennsylvania. Helen was a homemaker. She was active in various civic and charitable and social organizations, and they raised their family in State College, Marion, Helen Sue, Donna, and David.
Those are my mom and dad up there. So I'm Dottie Campbell, and Elma Litkey was my mother. Elma Litkey was born in 1907 in the Litkey house right across the street from this church. She was the second surviving child of Henry and Rose Litkey and the first granddaughter of the Ziehmers. She graduated from Westchester State Teachers College in 1931 and then taught high school English and French for 5 years at Cooper Township High School. She gave up teaching for many years after marriage to raise a family, but thoroughly enjoyed doing some long-term subbing in the 1960s in Du Bois. Elma wrote about loving to go to her grandparents' house. She said she always felt important when she was with her grandparents and as if she was very special to them. She especially loved Grandma Amelia's flower gardens and Grandpa William's spirited horses. So we can picture what that was like. It was while teaching at Cooper Township High School that she met her future husband, my father, Fred Muirhead. She said that the girls at school kept talking about this really good-looking guy who was working at the A&P in Winburn. And so she decided to go check it out. The rest is history. She found that Fred was not only handsome, but a man of fine character. On the surface, my parents looked like they would not be a good match. My mother was 7 years older than my father. My mother had graduate credits, and an undergraduate degree. My father had an 8th grade education because he had to quit school to help support the family. His father, my grandfather Muirhead, was blinded in the mines and couldn't support the family. In spite of this, or because of it, I don't know, they fell in love and had a lot of things that did unite them. They had a very strong work ethic. They had a strong belief in the value of family and in the importance of God in the home. They were married in this church on a Thursday evening in June 1936. They decorated the church with trailing arbutus. I don't know if you know what it is. I'd love to find some and see it. And they found it in the woods. The wedding party of 10 was made up of several brothers and sisters that you're going to hear about later today. And Walter Yonke, a cousin, was in the wedding party. The wedding almost didn't happen because Rose's husband, Henry Litkey, could not find his hat. All he had to do was walk across the street with hatless and come into the church where he was going to take off his hat anyway. But he would not go to that wedding without his hat. So a wild search was made of the house. Finally, the hat was found and the wedding could proceed. Aunt Bertha, who is your mother, right?
Yeah.
It would be your mother, Jeff, played the piano for the wedding and was very, family around here, they were all pulling together, weren't they? And they enjoyed each other so much. Elma and Fred started their married life in Phillipsburg, where my dad was the A&P manager. Then he was called to serve in World War II. He was in the North Atlantic on a ship for several years. When he was discharged from the service, the A&P company sent him to Du Bois as the manager, and he stayed in Du Bois managing that A&P until his retirement. After his retirement, the local hospital talked him into being a food manager for a few years, so he had 2 retirements. But they raised a family there. So in addition to me, there was my 2 brothers, Jack and Jim. I was telling Jack about, I have brothers named that. My brother Jack is no longer with us. My brother Jim and his wife Kathy are living in New Hampshire in a senior living situation. I was so spoiled, I guess. I kept wanting a sister, so my dad said to Uncle Bill, that you were just introduced to, Uncle Bill Litkey, who was then a judge, Dottie would like a sister. If you come across any children that need a home, let me know. So my Uncle Bill said, are you serious? I have a little girl, Vicki, who needs a home. And my dad said, yes, we're serious. So I have a younger sister by a few years, Vicki, who is preparing right now, packing up her home in Michigan, and she's going to move to Indiana, Pennsylvania to be living with me. And we've been very, very close all our lives. So the couple up here were married for 52 years until Elma's death. I count it such a blessing that we lived only 50 miles away from my parents. So my children grew up knowing their grandparents very well. And I know that they always felt very important right, Ressa?
Yeah.
And very special in their presence, just as Elma said she did in the presence of William and Amelia Ziehmer.
Me again. Between Alma and Martha, my mom, there was another baby, Robert, that died at birth. Mom was born in 1911, and of course, here in the house, grew up in the house across the road. I don't know when she met my dad, probably somewhere around 1939 or 40. He started his teaching career at a one-room school near Allport, and then he was working in a department store in Pittsburgh, and she was teaching up here. So I don't know where they met, but Mom's childhood dream was to be a nurse. But when she was 10 years old, she had rheumatic fever that damaged her heart. And when she graduated from high school, went to apply to nursing school, the doctors would not sign, say, the physical. The cardiologist in Williamsport said, "I'll be signing your death certificate. You can't handle the work." So Mom became a teacher. Went to Westchester College, got to teach elementary school. And Aunt Dolly told me many years later that she didn't think the teaching was any less strenuous than the nursing would have been for Mom.
Right.
But she taught in 2 years at the town of Ramey, and then right across the road here, where this newer home is, was the Forest two-room school that their family went to, and then later she taught in. And when that school was torn down in the 1930s, or closed, the elementary school in Winburn is where the kids went. And so Mom taught in Winburn until she married Dad, and then even after, because when Pearl Harbor attack in December 7th, 1941, 4 weeks later, Dad enlisted in the Naval Reserve, and 4 weeks after that, he was ordered to report for active duty to Newport, Rhode Island, and so they got buried here on a Sunday night at this church, February 1942. And then Mom lived with her parents through the war while Ron and I were born here, and lived in this house. And then we moved away. Dad finished up his master's at Penn State after the service, commuting from here to Penn State College. And then we moved to Mount Jewett, Pennsylvania, and then later to Wesleyville. And Dad taught high school history and English for 30-some years. During the war, he was stationed in Pearl Harbor as supervising the loading of LST ships for the Battle of the Pacifics. Mom, heart situation was stabilized enough that when Bill was old enough to go to school, Mom started back to teaching and taught elementary, Forest Park Elementary, near our home, until a few months before she had to retire. And in August of 1968, she had open heart surgery to replace the defective valve. The heart surgery went fine, the heart was working well, but 3 days later she died from kidney complications. She was age 58, by far the youngest of any of the Lidke children. Her parents, her great-grandparents, her brothers all lived into the late 80s or 90s. So that was my mom and dad.
someone planning to talk about? Okay, great.
I didn't know they had pictures of mom and dad, so I brought my own.
Oh, wonderful.
Just so you know, this is a picture of mother and dad. That's their graduation from high school pictures. So, and even my mother or my dad do not remember where this picture was taken, so, or what it was. But daddy was born across the street. When he graduated from high school, he worked several different jobs. He worked on the highway. He worked as a coal miner. He finally decided that coal mining wasn't his cup of tea, so he decided to become a milk tester. So he would go around the community, go to the different farms, test their milk to make sure there's no bacteria in it, that's not supposed to be there. And he did this for a good number of years. And it was at one of the farms that he met my mother. And my mother's one brother made a bet with my dad, with my dad, and said, I bet you $5, which was a lot of money back then, that you can't get Effie to go out with you. Well, my dad was always up to a challenge. So of course he went, and the rest was history. They were married for 68 years. But Dad worked many jobs. Most of them were in Bucks County or Montgomery County on the other side of the state. He was a tenant farmer, so we moved around a lot. I think Mother said the whole total from the time they got married until Mother passed away, I think they moved like 16 times. But the one farm that I remember most was Bailey's outside of Doylestown. And when the owner of that died, Dad was no longer going to be a tenant farmer. He said, okay, I got to find something else. So he worked for a tractor company and so on, but he finally decided to go to, it was then called Posen and Klein, it became Handy and Harmon. It was a tube company, and they would take wire miles long, and they would have to stretch it out to become hypodermic needles. Yes, so when they first were married, they bought the Folly, and the Folly was a little house over the hill. They bought that when they first got married. We lived there for a while, and then when Dad moved over to the other side of the state, they rented it out for like $5 or $6 a month. So when they retired, they moved back to the Folly and rebuilt or renovated it, and then they would come back and forth from Doylestown up, and then when they finally got the house finished, then Mother and Dad both retired. Mother worked numerous jobs. She was a bank teller, she was a switchboard operator, and but it was a lovely family to grow up in. Mother was 88 when she passed away in 2008. Daddy was 95 when he passed away in 2010. They had 3 kids. My sister, the oldest, Sandy, unfortunately passed away in 2011 at 67. My brother Henry, which you all know him as Skip, but his name was Henry, and his wife's name is Rose. So we have Henry and Rose from across the street to Henry and Rose, my brother. But yeah, so that's basically it. And then there's myself and my husband and our family. Thank you.
This is my mother, Bertha Litke Bird. She was married to my dad, Leroy. We lived in Munson, which is only 2.5 miles from here. So we were at Grandma and Grandpa's house all the time. When all of you as cousins would come, we were almost always here. And what a joy it is to just reflect on the family. I think we need to really pause and thank the Lord that we came from a very godly heritage. Not only from Rose and Henry, but from Uncle Gus and Aunt Effie and Aunt Bertha. They were godly people who knew the Lord Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord and had no hesitation to live their lives for Him. My mom and dad met, as best I can understand, in Harrisburg. My mother went to Thompson Business School, and Dad decided, and then Mom got a job with the state police. Dad decided he thought he would like to join the state police, but when he went for the physical, I think it might have been then that he met my mother, because she talked him out of becoming a state trooper, because in Scranton they had been having riots among the coal miners, and several state troopers had been killed. So she talked my dad out of becoming a state trooper. They were married here in this building, August 4th, 1945. By the way, I proposed to my wife right here at this little altar area when we were in high school, and we've been married for a long time. Mom, as I said, went to Thompson Business School, and Dad graduated from Newport High School. Neither of them had what you'd say a formal college education, but they were very hardworking, and God prospered them and put 3 children through college, my brother Dennis and myself and our sister Rosalie, and worked very hard. Mom was a secretary for most of her life in State College, and then she became a secretary and a bookkeeper for Dennis in his garden center business in Mechanicsburg. After we lived in Munson for most of our lives, they did later on move to Mechanicsburg, first to Milesburg for a few years and then to Mechanicsburg. Dad was a meat cutter. It was through Uncle Fred, I believe, that he got introduced to the A&P and worked as a meat cutter there for a while, and also for Acme and for the IGA. And even though he became a full-time employee as a mail carrier at Penn State University, on the weekends, on Saturdays, he would work in Phillipsburg as a meat cutter at the IGA market. And then Mom and Dad, later in their later years, worked for Dennis in his business, the garden center. And Dad, I think, was probably the top salesman. And he would even come back from Florida at Christmas time to sell Christmas trees. He put on his reindeer hat, and everybody knew Leroy. They had special interests. Mom loved reading, and especially working with the children on any number of TV programs. My dad loved to hunt, and we went hunting for deer. Dennis got a shotgun when he turned 12, and I got a shotgun when I turned 10. And we hunted with Dad for many, many years. I particularly. Dennis had other places that he hunted, but my dad broke all the rules when it came to hunting. The first 2 important rules is you have to be very quiet and you have to be very still. Dad was all over the place. I could hear him opening up his candy bar wrappers. He'd take a Coke with him and I could hear the Coke. And so one time I decided to get up to him real close and see if I could teach him a little. And I said, now Dad, you got to be very, very quiet. Don't move, stay real still. And we were still for just a couple minutes, and then he said, Larry, look over there, look over there. And I said, yeah, you see those tails going that way? They're going away from us. He broke every rule, but he had so much fun. In fact, when the funeral was held here for Dad, my wife's mother stood up and gave a little testimony. She said, Leroy loved hunting so much and got so excited. One year he came in and said, I had the greatest day ever. I missed $2. But Dad and Mom were so active here in the church, and I think that really distinguished them in their love for the Lord. They loved His Word. They both were Sunday school teachers. Dad was a Sunday school superintendent. Dad was a deacon, one of 2 deacons here in this church, and he was always a friend of the pastor, and he could tell the pastor where the bear went through the buckwheat when he needed to hear those things, but he was also a friend and loving, and one that would really become a real friend of this church. And I just have so many fond memories. Thank you all for coming, and I just look forward to these reunions. And I would just say this in closing, that The people that grew up in this church, our ancestors, knew Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord. And no doubt their prayers are still being affected today. So if you don't know Christ, if you've never repented and put your faith in Him, please do that, because that's the most important thing. And that's going to allow us to be in the greatest of all family reunions in heaven someday. If I can answer any questions for you afterward, I'd be more than happy to. Thank you.
Bob, let me tell the rest of the story.
What's that? Okay.
I wanted my brother to go first with the history, but I want to tell the rest of the story. I was so blessed to live with Grandma and Grandpa. I think I went there at the age of 10. Grandpa had a heart attack in the early summer, and I thought I was just going for a few weeks to help take care of the cows. It was a decision: we're going to sell the cows or we're not going to sell the cows. And my aunts, you know, you have all these aunts and they're trying to make decisions. They wanted Grandpa to get rid of the cows. Well, the cows have been here forever. So I went down in the early part of the summer thinking I was going to go back to school over in Munson. In cross country, it's about 3 miles, okay? I never went back home. Not even after I got out of college did I ever go back home. I would see my brother, my parents. Sunday was a very special day. We always had Sunday school, church, and a meal over with Grandma and Grandpa. We'd have church service Sunday night. We had prayer meeting Wednesday night. So I probably spent more time in this church growing up than you could ever imagine, okay? So and my cousins, my aunts would come all the time to visit Grandma and Grandpa. I had cousins around me all summer. It was incredible. And my uncles, what I learned from Uncle Bill was nothing short of phenomenal. I lived with Uncle Bill for 1 year while I was going to Penn State. And he was phenomenal. I mean phenomenal. And I could tell you stories all day about Uncle Bill. All my uncles were very, very special to me because they would come. And my aunts would be here. My Aunt Dolly would be here for a month, sometimes a little bit longer. If Uncle Ralph was on an international program and so forth, he traveled the world for the Lord and so forth. So I had the best ever. And by running to school, I ran to school, cross country. One pastor, a pastor who was here for many years, the Rieger farm. Okay, that was halfway. I only remember once in 8 years of school did we ever have a substitute teacher. Once. We had 4 rooms. All the outhouse, and each teacher taught 2 grades. We had 2 outhouses, one for the girls and one for the boys. And we had, each room had a big potbelly stove. And from about 6th grade on, I was in charge of helping with stoves. And if you wanted to get out of school early, you just left the draft open, put some extra coal on, and you could walk right out. Teachers couldn't handle the heat. All right, well, when it came time for me to decide where I was going to go to school, when I was growing up, I wanted to play for Penn State football. But at 140 pounds, Joe Paterno became head coach in '66, and that's when I started at Penn State. I went down to Bucks County, to Delaware Valley, watched this guy. He thought he was going to law school. Both of you guys were trying to go to law school. And he comes over and see Aunt Effie and Uncle Gus, but he was really after Nancy. So I thought, boy, I better move back with Uncle Gus and Aunt Effie. And that's what I did. I lived with them for a year. while I was going to school, running track and cross country and not getting good grades to become a veterinarian in organic chemistry. Oh, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and anyhow. But Nancy would take me to school lots of days in her 57 Chevy. Oh man, she loved that 57 Chevy. Okay, now, what do you want me to do, go a little faster? What's the hurry?
We got a lot to get through yet.
Huh?
Everybody's hungry.
Okay, everybody's on. All right, I'll wind this thing up. And I had the best childhood anybody could ever have. Grandma and Grandpa would talk German, and you know I didn't pick it up. I had to study French in high school down here at Cooper. I did go to Cooper High School,
Yeah.
but and my first job was with your dad,
Right over here.
right over here,
Yeah.
cleaning up the butcher shop. All right, now what else? I can tell you a little bit about, I've got to brag a little bit. My wife, we've been married 57 years. My brother and I got married, I think, 3 months apart. I just, you know, we both got our wives from the same school. My wife has been a caregiver for so long, it's unbelievable. Our daughter was born, didn't walk until she was 2.5. My mother-in-law came to live with us. It was supposed to be 6 weeks, 6 months, and ended up being 16 years. Then my brother-in-law, who never married, he ended up living in a house we had, still have it, for over 20 years, okay? So my wife's been a caregiver forever, and she has mental health issues. I gotta go out the door every morning, and she doesn't want me to come back until late lunch, after 1:30, 2 o'clock is when she has lunch and so forth. The evenings are much better. And so, we've been at Hershey, now over 30 years, where we live now, I think, 2 places and so forth, right behind the medical center. But I've got a couple other things here. I want to talk to the young people here. And I came from a family of school teachers. I think all my aunts, except for my mother, were teachers, okay? My wife was a teacher. She only lasted 5 years.
Dennis, we need to move on.
Yeah, I understand, but you've got young people here and they need to have some lessons. We want them to come back. I taught for 5 years at Milton Hershey School, the greatest orphanage in the world. It was all boys then. Our daughter taught for 8 years. And I'm concerned what's happening with technology for young people, and I mean that in all sincerity, for your grandchildren. I have 3 granddaughters. They're in Dallas, Texas, okay? And they are in sports at a level you cannot believe. The oldest one has played volleyball. All 3 of them are in volleyball, but the oldest one has played this year in Hawaii, Reno, Nevada, Minnesota, Boston, and she's on a recruiting trip as we speak in Arkansas. Okay. Technology in the business world is incredible. But for these young kids today, it is not good at all. Okay? It is not good at all. So I have a flip phone. Got this to try to influence my grandchildren, granddaughters. I don't have a voicemail. I don't text. If you want to get a hold of me, you call twice, right in a row, and I'll get right back to you. It's for helping my wife a little bit. One other real quick thing, and that's on food. And I've been blessed. I'm 80 years old. I don't wear glasses. I don't have hearing aids. So I've been blessed. On the food side, the greatest thing that's happening right now is a revolution in the food industry. I've been involved with it a little bit. We just opened a farm. It's 100% organic.
But we do need to move on.
Huh?
We do need to move on, Dennis.
I know you need to move on, but I'm just saying, go on the White House diet. It's the greatest diet in the world. And it's just incredible. Thanks for listening to this old guy, but I had the best childhood ever. I miss some cousins that aren't here. All right, Bob, you got the podium.
Good work.
youngest Licky was Amelia, more commonly called Ollie or Millie. She met Ralph in 1941 this summer. Dolly had gone to her nurse's training at Children's Hospital, Philadelphia, and Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Ralph was a seminary student, and this church every summer brought a student pastor in. And Ralph was here as a student pastor. They met. They planned to get married a year later. But December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor, and they moved it up. 3 weeks later, they got married here in this church, went to Chicago. While he was in seminary, she worked as a nurse at a doctor's office. And then when he got a pastorate, she didn't work as a nurse after that. She put her focus on the ministry of whatever church he was in. And Ralph served in the Army as a chaplain in the Philippines at the last year of World War II. He went back to Korea. He was a chaplain in a frontline unit in Korea that every member of the regiment was awarded Bronze Star. They were right on the front lines, the worst part of the fighting. And then when he came back, he finished up his service, pastored a couple churches, and he was on the staff of the American Baptist churches raising missionary support. So he traveled all over the world to missions, bringing reports back to the people. And at one time he was invited to speak to to preach in a Baptist church in Kiev, Ukraine, the capital of Ukraine. And as the pastor introduced him, Ralph mentioned that his mother's parents, his wife's mothers and grandparents had come from the village of Sigensol in the Ukraine. And hands went up around the congregation and people said something. And the translator said, those people were from that area and want to take you back there to visit. But of course the Russians, they were so deviating from the itinerary. So that's Dolly and Ralph.
Now, next up is the Yankees.
Okay, we'll go with you. Okay. Been a long time since I stood up in front of a bunch of people.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So Gus and Emma. Emma was the daughter of William, one of the no, I'm gonna back up a little bit. William and Amelia's baby daughter that was born in Brazil, one of the twins. That was my grandmother, Emma. Okay, she grew up here because they got here when she was a baby. When she was 17 years old, she married Gus. That's their wedding picture. And they had the 3 children, Walter, Elsie, and Herbert. My brother Tony's going to talk about our dad.
Okay.
Okay.
First, I want to start with a little story about my dad and my grandfather. Of course, my grandfather had his doctor's office right over here. He was a chiropractor /
Faith healer.
faith healer. Many different
Not
names
sure what
fit
we
him.
call him.
But he was a very popular guy anyway. I was probably about this tall. My eyes were level with the handle on the lawnmower. And it was my job that I had to go over there and cut that grass. And it was horrible. So I would hide. But Dad found me this day. He said, come on, you gotta cut the grass. So okay, I'll do it. I get done, and I'm standing there with my father and my grandfather, and my grandfather gets $1 out and hands it to my dad for me, but I never did get that $1. Well, anyway, my father, Walter, met met my mother in the Phillipsburg hospital. He was having an appendix attack. And after that, I guess they met somewhere for ice cream, is that
Right.
correct?
She was a nurse.
She was a
She
nurse.
was a nurse.
Yeah. They married in Erie in 1940. They ended up there because at that time jobs were very scarce and he was able to find a job in Erie.
And I think Bill Litkey suggested we go up there.
That's how that happened,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. Anyway, my father went to Cooper High School and to Penn State. And, he actually played Penn State football a little bit. He said he had the football one time and he had 30 guys tackle him. Anyway, my grandfather and my father and his brother Herb started Yonkey's Meats, which was right over here. They started with chickens back after World War II ended. By the mid to late 50s, it was a surprisingly big business. In 1957, they did $250,000 worth of business here in this little town of Forest, which today is about $3 million in comparison. So, kind of neat history for what happened here. Okay. My parents had 5 children. Are they up there? Yeah,
There we are.
yeah.
That was a long time ago.
I remember that picture though.
I do too.
Sister Nancy standing beside me, brother Bill on the left. I think that's you in the middle, isn't it?
It is.
Sister Julie and your mother and father. That picture was taken when?
Long time
In the
ago.
70s.
No. No.
No?
No. 80s.
Okay, 80s. Anyway, I have one more story to tell you. My dad was an amazingly busy guy. School board president, even was the secretary of the state school board for the state of Pennsylvania. Well, a lot of dinner times at the house, my dad would bring up something about the school board. Why he liked it so much, I'll never know. But he brought it up one night, and my mother said, "That's it. If you talk about the school board one more time, I'm leaving and I'm never coming back." But looking back, my father really was an amazing guy. He was in the Boy Scouts and all kinds of different things. I've always looked up to him as a great person. Yeah. One other thing of a different subject. Beth, will you please stand up? My wife is from the Philippines, and she is a recent citizen of the United States. Okay, your turn.
Could you send do we have the next family picture? Okay. This is our family, and next to it, Uncle Herbert, Aunt Lorna, and Sylvia and Ted. This was taken at my grandparents' golden wedding anniversary out of Blackfish Inn. And I'm going to bet that most of you have parents or grandparents who were there. There were 180 people at that place. It was a big deal. And I think Bill Litkey organized it. He was into everything.
There wasn't even a bathroom, it was just an outhouse. Think about it.
That's true. And they were all dressed up. So I'm going to talk about Aunt Elsie. And unfortunately, her granddaughters are not here. They were here last year, a couple of years ago. They couldn't come this year. And I truly don't know a whole lot about her. She became a nurse, obviously. She married Raymond Yoder, who had been my father's roommate at Penn State. And one of the stories Daddy used to tell about Uncle Raymond was that he worked in the creamery. Raymond worked in the creamery. And he was a prankster, cut up, liked to do fun things. So he and my dad were in the creamery one time, and Uncle Raymond, in his bare feet, got into a big vat of cheese, just for fun. Think about that when you're eating Penn State cheese. My father never ate cheese again. Never.
That's true.
That's true.
Wouldn't touch it if you mentioned cheese.
So Raymond and Elsie, I assume they met because of Daddy. They were married on Memorial Day, 1935, in this church. We have a wonderful little newspaper article about it. And my father and Bob's, where'd Bob go? His mother were both in the wedding. And then they had the reception around the corner at their house. So Aunt Elsie was a nurse, but I don't know that she ever really practiced after she married Raymond. They had 5 children. They had Michael, Kay, Linda, David, and Diane. And they first lived in Harrisburg. Then they moved to Colorado. I have a newspaper clipping from January 31st, 1946 that said Grandma and Grandpa accompanied Elsie and 5 children to Colorado because they were moving there. And I thought about that. I thought, it's middle of winter. Did they drive all those children? Now I'm thinking maybe they took the train. Still, what a journey. What a journey. Yeah. So they moved to Colorado. They also lived in Reno. They lived in San Francisco. And in the mid-60s, Aunt Elsie and Diane, the youngest daughter, were in Seattle because my brother was in the service out there, Brother Bill, and he visited them. By the time I was in Seattle in 1970, they were not there anymore. They had gone back to California. We've had no contact with them over the years until I came to this reunion, 3-4 years ago, and thought, there's a branch here we've got to get in touch with. So I did an internet search, which is so foreign to me, and I found Kay, the oldest daughter, and I contacted her, got responses, and then 2 of her grandchildren came to the reunions in the last few years, which is great, and we're still in touch. I love that. Elsie died kind of young in her early 60s in 1977. And somewhere along the line, and I don't know where or why, she and Uncle Raymond got divorced. I don't know anything about that. I only met her once. She was here visiting. Okay, now we put Jeff on the spot.
We did.
Sylvia was supposed to be here to talk about Uncle Herbert, and Sylvia's not here.
Yeah.
So we might have to help Jeff.
Yeah, Grandpa Yankee, maybe some of you knew him as Herbert, was my grandfather. Really, he was the grandparent, or the grandparents that lived furthest from my other grandparents. I'm from the Rhode Island area, pretty much grew up on the East Coast. Grandpa Yankee made his way to Davenport, Iowa, by way of Palmer Chiropractic College. After graduating Penn State.
To graduate in Penn State and then being part owner of the business here.
With a degree, or he studied animal husbandry, which I guess
Yes.
was very involved with the family business here. But he decided he wanted to go in a completely different direction, ended up at Palmer Chiropractic, which maybe, again, aligns with his father.
Right,
You know.
because he used to help Grandpa.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so that's probably where all that came from. So he was Grandpa Yankee from Davenport, Iowa. And this is just memories of a kid. I just remember he had a great house on a great big property. And I would always used to think, because we're from the Newport area in Rhode Island, and I'm like, Grandpa has got a little mini mansion out there in Davenport, Iowa. But it turns out he was also very generous. He was very involved with the Lions organization. He held executive offices all the way up to president of his area, I guess. He loved to travel internationally and across our own country. My son in the back there, again, Rhode Island. He will be the last holder of a living memory of Grandpa Yankee, because Grandpa Yankee drove across the country in his very late ages to visit our family in Newport. And then that inspired she was my wife back then, to take the kids on a road trip to Davenport. They were actually on their way to Black Hills and decided to stop in Davenport and visit Grandpa because they had already been introduced to Grandpa. So, because of those two trips, the last living memory, likely, of Herbert Yankee will go with Justin Yankee in the back there. So, I wish my dad had been able to come. I wish Aunt Sylvia had been able to come. They would have, maybe some dates and stories to tell, but Grandpa lived a big life, and he was generous, and he made it to his mid-90s, so I think he did all right. And that's what I got.
Good job.
I'm in pretty much for the broad, although I do see my brother did finally make it. So there've only been a few of us who have been attending the reunions over the last couple of years. But the picture you're looking at is my grandfather and grandmother. I never knew my grandfather because he passed before I was born, but it's part of the story because he was a pastor, and they lived all over the place. They met here. He was here one summer. I guess as an intern, or you might say, and met my grandmother, who was Bertha Ziehmer, and then within a short period of time got married, and they ended up having had 6 children, of which 4 survived into adulthood. The lovely young lady up here is my wife with Norma. When we began this program, they mentioned that there was one grandchild of William Ziehmer still alive, and that's my aunt, Norma. As a matter of fact, she turned 96 just a couple of days ago. I see her every single week. Hardly a week goes by. My brother, the back, takes care of all of her finances and those kinds of things. She was a nurse. She got her nursing degree in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and then she continued, and when our family moved out into Maryland, she came with the family and lived with us for many, many years until eventually she met her husband. She married late in life, Carol Files. They got married in 1966. Norma was 35, and he was 36 at that time. They were married a little over 50 years. I'm not sure how many years he's been gone now, but they lived not far from us, and I would say growing up, she was like another mother to us, because before she got married, we would see her all the time. She would, like, for instance, if it snowed, I would go over to her place and shovel snow, and she would give me a quarter, whatever that was worth. Okay? Let's see. The top picture would be the other 3. Well, it's all 4, but the other 3. The one holding the baby is my Uncle Bill. He was the oldest. Matter of fact, there were 15 years difference between him and Norma. He was an attorney. My understanding is that he got his law degree in Minnesota, and then he and his wife Carolyn lived in Fort Wayne, but mostly in Lafayette, Indiana, for their life. They had three boys. Sadly, one of them passed away a few years ago. We didn't see him very much when we were growing up. We lived in Maryland, they lived in Indiana, but Bill was, in addition to being an attorney, was very much into history. So when they had the centennial of the Civil War, he came out for the reenactment of Manassas, and he met us up in Gettysburg for the reenactment of Gettysburg and those kinds of things. as I said, I did not know him real well, but he was a wonderful uncle when you did get to meet him, and very pleasant man. The last time I saw him was in this church when my grandmother passed away in 1984. So that's and I believe he died in 1970s. I'm not sure. The little boy who's looking up to him would be the next son. That's Richard Braun, although we referred to him as Uncle Dick. He was a pastor. According to, 2 weeks ago I was over with Aunt Norma trying to brush up on some of this to make sure I got it right, and she said she thinks that he had a church for a little while, and then eventually he moved to St. Louis, Missouri, where he was a pastor there for many years, and then in the early 60s moved to Youngstown, Ohio, and that's where he pastored until he retired. He and Becky, his wife, they had 2 adopted children who are my cousins Richard and Elizabeth. The thing I remember most about Uncle Dick is that he had a tremendous sense of humor. He would come out every summer. They would go to some kind of a church convention, and then on their way home they would come by the house and they would stay for a few days. And that's when we would get to go out and eat in a restaurant or go get ice cream, something that we didn't do on a regular basis. And usually there would be something funny that would happen while he was visiting. The little girl with the silly grin, that's my mother, Doris. She would be she was the third in line, and she met my dad when she was in college. She was, as I mentioned, my grandparents moved around a lot because my grandfather had churches in various places, and towards the end of his career as a pastor, mostly in the Dakotas. And so Mom was going to Dakota Wesleyan, and just so happens that it's in Mitchell, South Dakota, and during World War II there was an air base there, Mitchell Air Force Base, and my dad happened to be stationed there for a while, and according to the story, as I understand it, is that the men at the military base, they were told that if they went to a certain place on a Sunday morning, they could get picked up by members from the church, and they would be taken to church, and then they would be taken to the home of whoever took them to church, and they would get a home-cooked meal. Well, you can figure out where this story is going, because my dad and one of his friends happened to be at this particular spot, and they got picked up by a couple of girls, and one of those girls, of course, eventually became my mother. Funny story. So Dad goes over to North Africa and Italy during the war. Mom is still continuing her education, and she's going to get a degree in nutrition, but she would send letters back and forth with my dad, and the one time she made a batch of brownies that she sent to him, and he's going to get these brownies in Italy in the war. Okay, so of course when Dad got the brownies, and I don't know how long it took for the brownies to get there, and he wrote back about how wonderful they were. Well, what he didn't know was my mother made a separate batch and had it sit out for about the length of time that she knew it was going to take my dad, and of course the brownies were not really good that my mother had, but she let it go and they got married anyway. The interesting thing about the 3 of them, Bill, Dick, and my mother, is they all 3 got married in the summer of 1946 after the war ended. I didn't mention about, again going back to Dick, who was the pastor, he served in World War II. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. He received a Silver Star. Never talked about it afterwards. He did reveal some information about his war experiences to a grandson, as I understand, but he took most of it with him to the grave. I'll finish up, there were 2 others Ralph was born after Uncle Bill. He only survived 9 days, but the sad one was after Ralph, Warren was born, and Warren lived to be almost 5 years old, but tragically when my grandfather had a church in Chicago, Warren was killed by a trash truck. It's very, very sad because it did impact my grandmother for the rest of her life. So I don't know if any of the older cousins know any of the stories, but it was difficult for my grandmother. So anyway, Norma, like I said, is still alive. We see her on a regular basis. Mom made it to 99 and a half. I don't know if any of the other cousins made it that far. She passed about 3 years ago, and Dick passed in 2007. So that's the Braun story.
Is that everyone?
It is. So we have a slideshow basically to facilitate introductions. That's kind of the purpose of this. Some people have sent information in, and some people have not. So if you don't see your name or any information, or you see only very little information, please share more with us. Send us pictures, send us life updates, and we'll make sure that it gets in for next year. This is last year's picture. As soon as we're done in here with our little intros, we'll go out and take another one for this year, and it'll be in next year's. So, Bob, anybody want to talk about Bob's family? Tractors? Going once? Going twice? All right.
I'll speak for him.
Go for it.
Or both of us, all of us.
Okay.
You know, I mean, if you go back to the other one, I mean, out of everything, I mean, I know Ron's had some health issues he's gone through the last year. I mean, Mary's obviously here, but doesn't like to talk too much. Bob's usually the talker in that family. Drew's currently at home, but traveling the country on a pretty regular basis. And my wife Courtney's here, if we can talk on the next slide, I guess. So our family, we're up in Conneautville, up by Meadville. And yeah, I mean, not a whole ton to speak of. I mean, Caleb's working up at Camp Judson, which is where Kevin Saxon is, managing director of. Anything else we should contribute to this conversation?
Yes, I asked if you had any special gifts, talents, interests, that sort of thing that you would like to share. That would be Camp Judson. That's special.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the Camp Judson board and boards of different things, so I guess leadership and management is sort of.
And you met your wife at Camp
Yeah.
Judson. Kevin met his wife doing a program for Camp Judson. Bob and I spent the first 10 years of our married life at Camp Judson. And now our son, who was born when we were at Camp Judson as director, is now manager for the last how many years? Yeah. They have 2 children. Yeah, whatever. It's been 10, 15 years. And then their 2 children, Jessie just graduated from nursing school last year and is what is she, cardiac vascular? Yeah, ICU nurse. And My husband, who's not here this year, lower left, turned 85 this year, and he and Skylar took a trip to Iceland. You want to say something about that?
It was amazing. If you've never been to Iceland, you should go. It's stunning.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, picture on the right, of course, is me with this little person, which is why we went to Tennessee. And inserted in the middle is one of the things that I do, and that's make quilts. That one was a gift to Tony and Beth, and it represents the Pennsylvania woods in the fall. It's leaves, it's what it's supposed to be. And then didn't I take up another page?
Yeah, one of the other things that you're passionate about.
Gardens, yes. Lower left was by Bainbridge Island Garden. We were there for 30 years. Fabulous garden. Then we went to Arizona. That's the one on the right. A little more challenging. I had 2 hydroponic towers, which were wonderful. In the back, you can barely see that I had 4 raised beds. Upper left is our new Tennessee garden. Brand new this year. We've just put it together. So I am either in the garden or in front of a sewing machine, or with her.
You make excellent quilts.
Em?
Oh, that's me. All right, so that's my family. We live in Tennessee as well. My husband is not here. He's on a trip, probably actually no, he was supposed to go to Korea, but they canceled that. So he's a pilot. On the bottom right is my son Matthew, who just got married in April, and we're expecting our first grandbaby in the end of September. And then my daughter at the graduation stuff, she just graduated University of Utah with a marketing and business degree, and she moved back to Arizona. So they're both living in Arizona after we all moved to Tennessee. So we fly back and forth a lot to see them. And that's it. That's it.
All right, this is for me, my wife Grace, our daughter Starlet. We live in Chattanooga as well. I fly to 757 for FedEx. Grace started working as a nurse practitioner and published a couple children's books. This little one started walking and talking and has a lot to say, if you haven't heard her this entire time. And Grace and I just got back from a fun vacation in Italy a couple days ago.
Where did Beth go? She left.
Probably.
Anyway, that was, the picture on the left was her ceremony when she became a citizen. And that is the judge that was there that day. And that is her and I on the right.
She became a citizen in Belmont.
In Belmont Courthouse. It was really nice, about 20 people from all over the world.
And this is our sister Nancy, who has been here years past. She has Parkinson's and she's in very bad shape. So she couldn't make it this year. We hope to see her
Today.
Amazing.
Today. Well, she's meeting her team of four.
In Penn State. I'm going to camp in Penn State, I believe on Tuesday. Her doctor got it.
And Maddie will be a junior this in high school this coming year. This is her dad, Kevin Miller.
No talent.
He can build or fix anything in the world, pretty much. And my other two daughters' families are pretty much what they've been. They're settled in Maryland and South Carolina.
Awesome.
Chris, is Chris here?
They ended up making it, or they did not make it? Don't know?
They were, Sylvia did not come.
Did not make it? Okay.
Last minute, not sure. Jeff and Justin.
See me before, Jeff and Justin, third trip here. Have a daughter back home who just had, well, not just, but last September, has a grandson, grandson to me, his name, little James. The third James the third. His granddaughter Taya, just, we call it graduation, but she just left, graduated nursery school. She's legal to have pre-K next year. Yeah, they call it a moving up ceremony. That's it.
Special talents, passions, interests.
For myself, it's still motorcycles and the dream of being able to go wherever I want, whenever I want, at the end of my working career. Justin can speak for himself on that.
Oh, you want to get that?
Talents, I mean, fitness helps, and, I've been getting really involved in the church.
And what?
In church.
The church.
Yeah.
Good for you.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you
That's it.
all.
So, we're gonna head outside for our picture. Maddie, I'm gonna